Arknights!
Welcome. In this video, Episode 9 Stormwatch of Arknights will be summarized. Throughout the video, there will be spoilers for the story of Arknights. If you don't want to be spoiled, please go and play the game. Horn leads her Victorian squad, including Bagpipe and Triangle, into a warehouse hunting stolen Originum goods. They corner a frightened young feline named Damien, and in the chaos, Bagpipe tackles him and mistakes a dropped item for a bomb, only to find it's just produce. Captain Kelly and his cold adjutant Hill arrive and take custody of Damien, citing jurisdiction, while Bagpipe protests that the locals seem to be obstructing the investigation. Horn agrees to let Hellick forces handle the suspect for now, though she senses something is wrong, and sends Triangle to keep tracking the smuggling routes quietly. The next morning, Horn and Bagpipe wait for a scheduled interrogation that keeps getting delayed, using the time for Horn to reprimand Bagpipe for recklessly endangering herself during the warehouse incident. They discover through another imprisoned young man that Damien was taken away and now has been shot dead, allegedly for attacking his escort, a story Bagpipe finds impossible to believe. Hill delivers the news coldly and refuses further explanation, confirming that the barracks are now stonewalling the Victorian officers at every turn. Realizing they can't rely on local cooperation, Horn decides to pursue leads through farm worker communities while pressing the barracks for interrogation records. Just then, Triangle radios in from an ambush, revealing that the mysterious Spectre force is active in County Hillock right now, escalating the stakes of their mission. At the local Rhodes Island branch office, Jane, a Vorvier ceremonial guard, brings breakfast and gossip to operators Oliver, Shredder, and Will, describing her careful morning rituals with the flag and her baking. A stray ball shatters the window and hits her, leading her outside to comfort a wary local boy named Craig, whose father died of oropathy, and she gently returns his ball despite his fear of being struck. Back inside, Shredder explains the hardship and stigma surrounding oropathy patients in the neighborhood, and Jane admits she wants to treat the residents better than her fellow soldiers do. The group tries to lighten the mood with a card game, staking chores on the outcome when Will loses again to Oliver's teasing. Suddenly, Outcast appears, having secretly entered unnoticed, startling everyone including Oliver mid-game. She dismisses formalities, requests some of Jane's tea and pie, and playfully performs a card trick to break the ice before urging the flustered staff to relax rather than rush into work discussions. Introductions follow, and Outcast praises Jane's warmth, contrasting it with the grim rumors surrounding Victorian soldiers, while Jane humbly thanks her for the kindness. Outcast proposes a toast with the gin that she had recently bought, though Shredder declines since they're on duty, so they settle for tea instead. The group returns to their card game, and Outcast teasingly offers Will a lucky blessing as he prepares to deal again. Bagpipe overhears grieving Taran locals mourning Damien, learning that resentment is boiling over as an embittered man named Ronan hints at joining a resistance group, while a frightened woman named Grenine refuses to help for fear of reprisal. Captain Kelly secretly visits his sister Claudna, revealing Damien was his own nephew, and confesses guilt over failing to protect him despite following orders. And Claudna's son Craig calls him a traitor before running off. Victorian soldiers then violently break up a gathering of mourning civilians, and Bagpipe intervenes to stop the beating, getting struck herself in the process. Jane, secretly out of uniform, helps clean Bagpipe up and explains the deep ethnic tension between the Victorians and the native Taran population, whose history stretches back to the legendary King Gale. Bagpipe encourages Jane to use her position for good, and Jane agrees to reach out to a local contact named Sorsay for leads on Damien's associates. Meanwhile, Horn confronts Colonel Hamilton after being stonewalled for hours, arguing that only a well-trained, well-armed group could be behind the massive Originum theft, and that executing suspects without trial undermines their shared investigation. Hamilton dismisses her concerns, revealing deep personal and ideological hatred for the Taran population, whom he blames entirely for the deaths of Victorian soldiers in the ongoing Spectre Force attacks. He describes them as inseparable from the resistance itself, citing a banned book of poetry as proof of their supposed treachery, and refuses to acknowledge any innocent civilians among them. Their conversation is interrupted by a report that 2 more Victorian defense units have lost contact after being attacked, deepening the sense of crisis. Hamilton uses the news to reject Horn's plea for cooperation entirely, coldly dismissing her from his office. Later, Horn and Bagpipe visit Chef McMartin's chip shop, a Rhode Island liaison point, where they learn their reports to Londinium have gone unanswered, raising suspicions of intercepted communications. Meanwhile, Jane reconnects with her distraught friend Cerise, Damien's cousin, who reveals she unknowingly passed information for a group plotting something dangerous and gives Jane an address for a meeting that night, urging her to hand it to someone trustworthy. Jane delivers the tip to Bagpipe through a secret drop, pointing them towards a gathering at Baron Bolton's estate on Dam Street. Elsewhere, Outcast charms the branch office staff and uses her sharp ear for language to needle out truths about the Tehran community's fading culture and rising tensions, later exposing and dismissing an army informant tailing Bagpipe and Horn. As the 2 officers head to the meeting, they briefly clash with a boy named Craig before noticing that they're being watched by an operative with a distinct glowing ring. At Baron Bolton's secret gathering, the extremist leaders Mandragora and Hermione bicker over strategy and impatience for revolution before learning their location has been compromised and slipping away just in time. Horn and Bagpipe infiltrate the party using Horn's noble bloodline as a passport, observing wealthy Tehrans and sympathetic nobles debating cultural revival, financial dependence, and foreign sponsorship over drinks. Horn shares a philosophical exchange with the celebrated bard Seamus Williams, who insists his poetry seeks understanding rather than incitement, even as he acknowledges the growing hunger for Tehran resurgence. Bagpipe grows alarmed when their teammate Cello misses a scheduled check-in and notices the plaza outside emptying unnaturally fast. Colonel Hamilton then storms the ballroom with soldiers, revealing the meeting has been a trap all along and declaring everyone present captured. Colonel Hamilton reveals he deliberately shadowed Horn and Bagpipe to expose the hidden nobles conspiring with the resistance, then threatens to torture a captured youth for information despite Horn's protest that innocents are among the captives. Bard Williams steps forward to take responsibility in place of the frightened young man, but before he can be seized, a ball thrown through the window turns out to be a bomb that detonates the room. Meanwhile, Jane confronts a soldier brutalizing a Tehran woman during a house search, pushing back against his justification that all Tehrans share collective guilt, and convinces him to leave, only to learn the woman's son Craig has been taken by soldiers. Determined to help, Jane sets off to find the boy herself. Outside, some soldiers of Dublin, the pro-Draco revolutionary movement, launch a coordinated strike against Hillock, overwhelming Victorian patrols and rallying wounded Tehran youths with promises of liberation. Their mass leader receives word that the ballroom bombing failed to eliminate the barracks leadership and that local allies who know too much are marked for elimination unless the leader intervenes. Weighing the risks of exposing their operation against losing control of the moment, the leader decides to act personally, declaring intent to strike the ballroom directly. The Dublin soldiers rally behind the leader's resolve, hoping this spark will finally break them free of Victoria's hold. After the bombing, Horn and Bagpipe survive and mourn the Bard's sacrifice as the mysterious Dublin leader unleashes a devastating arts attack that instantly incinerates everyone near the city hall. Fighting through the burning streets, Bagpipe and Horn interrogate the dying Baron Bolton before Dublin crossbowmen accidentally kill him, revealing only the enigmatic leader is connected to an unnamed duke. Elsewhere, Outcast rescues Will from Dublin soldiers and vows to protect every Rhode Island operator, including Jane, who's been spotted near the fighting in District 17. Regrouping, Horn and Bagpipe examine a modified Victorian crossbow taken from an enemy soldier, realizing the rebels have long-standing outside funding and weapons beyond what they stole recently. This causes Horn and Bagpipe to wonder where the originally stolen Originum goods actually went. Contacting Triangle, Horn learns her team fought through the night against Dublin soldiers hiding in the agricultural plates and has now infiltrated a transport vehicle believed to be carrying the missing Originum shipment, promising to reveal the thief's identity soon despite the danger. As reports flood in of entire districts falling to the enemy, Horn urges Colonel Hamilton to evacuate the agricultural plates and seal off the city to stop reinforcements. But he dismisses her advice while secretly confirming he suspected the Turan's complicity all along. Alone with his adjutant Hill, Hamilton reveals a ruthless private agenda involving secretly prepared artillery and a determination to eliminate any interference, including from Horn herself. Growing paranoid about how the enemy predicted the raid at the Boltons' estate, he ultimately dismisses the possibility of her betrayal, but grows convinced that the surrounding population's Turan loyalty makes them all suspect. Hamilton signals that one more critical action is now overdue. Dublin soldiers capture Saursay for tipping off the Victorian army about the meeting, and she confronts the masked leader, accusing them of causing deaths of hopeful supporters through their fire. Despite Mandragora's insistence on a swift execution to intimidate the watching locals, the leader hesitates, privately reflecting on past traumas of being forced to kill fellow Turans since childhood under an unnamed mentor's influence. Saursay accepts her fate with quiet courage, asking only that her family be told she loved them and that a hidden gift meant for her mother be passed along, before the leader sentences and burns her personally. Afterward, Mandragora and Hermione mock the leader's uncharacteristic reluctance, with Hermione suggesting Mandragora orchestrated the execution partially out of jealousy over the leader's favoritism towards Saursay. The two then turn to planning the next phase, coordinating other operatives and preparing to fully secure County Hillock before the leader's own advance. Left alone, the leader silently questions their own identity and purpose, reflecting on having spent their whole life imitating someone else's fire and presence rather than forging their own path. When a soldier arrives to invite the leader to a strategy meeting, they decline, choosing solitude to think instead, in order that no one disturb them. Wandering through the ruins of a burned village, the leader discovers a scorched fragment of a poem describing a soul weighed against a great flame that consumed the land, an anonymous verse that resonates with something unspoken inside them. The moment lingers with quiet unease as the leader recognizes their own fire in the destruction described, suggesting a growing crack beneath their composed and ruthless exterior. Jane returns to find the Turan community turning against her, blaming her for Saursay's execution and rejecting her as an outsider despite her sincere efforts to help, even as Craig and the grieving women she once comforted echo their rejection. Devastated, she seeks out the site of Saursay's death and tries to find her ashes, only to be reported as suspicious and nearly killed by a Dublin soldier before Victorian troops intervene and kill them instead. In her grief and confusion, Jane unknowingly points the soldiers towards fleeing rebels, leaving her uncertain which side she now belongs to. Outcast arrives to comfort her, sharing a story from her own past about failing to prevent a massacre despite trying to broker peace, and helps Jane realize that inaction in the face of evil is not an acceptable alternative. Jane ultimately affirms that despite the pain, she does not regret standing up for what she believed was right. Meanwhile, Horn and Bagpipe recognize that the Victorian retreat is unnaturally orderly, suggesting Colonel Hamilton has some hidden strategy despite the city's collapse, and Horn orders Bagpipe to secure an escape route and warn Londinium while she heads to a communications base. Before parting, Horn reveals she once doubted Bagpipe's potential due to her attachment to home, but has now come to see that the same loyalty as the source of her strength as a soldier. Triangle then tries to make contact from deep inside a besieged barracks artillery battalion, revealing that the stolen Originum products were modified to strip out their active cores, mirroring the tactics of an infamous bombing case. As enemy forces close in, Triangle reports Snare's death and then the loss of contact with the rest of her team, noting eerily that the attackers used familiar equipment and callouts. The call cuts off in an explosion, leaving Horn with unanswered questions about who truly is behind the attack as static fills the radio. Horn is once again captured by Colonel Hamilton's forces after Hill's soldiers threaten to kill Cello unless she surrenders, forcing her to stand down despite her fury at being betrayed by supposed colleagues. Meanwhile, at the Rhodes Island office, Outcast organizes an evacuation, directing operators to distribute leftover medical supplies to local hospitals and hidden clinics before the branch shuts down, while Jane insists on helping deliver the medicine despite her recent grief. Outcast reveals a personal habit of never firing more than 5 rounds due to a promise made to a friend, hinting at a deeper history beneath her carefree demeanor. As the team says their goodbyes, a distant explosive sound raises an alarm, with Outcast immediately sensing something is wrong and urging Jane to stay inside. Elsewhere, Bagpipe rushes to Chef McMartin's shop seeking a messenger, only to learn that Captain Kelly has been arrested by his own barracks under a false pretense of harboring oropathy patients, part of a broader purge targeting soldiers with Turan heritage. Before his arrest, Kelly secretly passed McMartin a list proving the barracks are illegally manufacturing Originum weapons, and Bagpipe urges him to get this evidence out of County Hillock immediately. McMartin insists on delivering the message personally given its importance, dismissing Bagpipe's unease about a strange sound outside as mere thunder. As he dashes into the street, the sound intensifies and reveals itself not as a storm, but as an artillery bombardment raining down across the city, catching him in the open as chaos erupts everywhere. After the shelling reveals active Originum contamination across the city, Outcast organizes an emergency rescue effort, sending Oliver and Shredder into the streets while assigning herself the dangerous epicenter of District 10. She reveals to a shaken Jane that the Victorian barracks likely orchestrated the dirty bomb attacks themselves, using it as a pretext to eliminate Turans indiscriminately under the guise of infection control, forcing Jane to confront the moral corruption on both sides of the conflict. Despite her uncertainty about where she truly belongs, Jane insists on joining the rescue mission, asserting that helping the injured matters regardless of politics or personal rejection. Oliver grants his approval and the group heads out together, with Outcast warning everyone to stay alert to contamination and hostile forces from both factions. Meanwhile, Bagpipe searches the bomb ruins for Chef McMartin, encountering a Dian-doubling soldier pinned under rubble who begs to be killed rather than risk infection, which she refuses to do. Continuing her search, Bagpipe discovers McMartin's body crushed beneath the rock, having died protecting the crucial intelligence about the barracks' illegal weapons program, and she vows to honor his sacrifice. As the dying soldier mutters fanatical devotion to the leader and hints at a coming resurgence before dying, more enemy reinforcements began emerging from rubble despite the earlier bombardment. Realizing her mission to safely deliver the intelligence has failed with McMartin's death, Bagpipe recognizes that seizing the communication center is now their only remaining chance to warn Londinium. Back with Horn, she confronts Colonel Hamilton directly, accusing him of orchestrating the dirty bomb attack deliberately before the Spectre force ever infiltrated County Hillock, arguing that his prejudice and thirst for vengeance risk igniting a civil war across all of Victoria rather than securing a true victory. Hamilton dismisses her warnings, revealing he wants the destruction to serve as a message to all Turans about the consequences of rebellion, and hints ominously that his actions may be sanctioned by forces above him, given Londinium's suspicious silence. Horn vows to see him court-martialed once freed, and Hamilton releases her without concern, confident in his impunity. She then rallies the surviving members of her platoon to make a final push towards the communication center, determined to honor Triangle's sacrifice by getting word out no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Hamilton realizes his adjutant Hill has mysteriously abandoned his post without orders, adding another crack to his crumbling control. Amid the ongoing crisis, Jane works tirelessly alongside Outcast to treat the wounded, opening up about her privileged Victorian upbringing and a childhood memory of trying to help an illiterate feline girl, only to realize how deeply unequal opportunity has always been in her society. Outcast encourages her growing self-awareness, and Jane resolves to keep helping despite her uncertainty over her place in the conflict. When Fred spots a gravely injured girl near the rioters' command center, likely an important figure among them, Oliver hesitates out of caution for Rhodes Island's neutrality, but Outcast insists on saving her regardless of political risk, framing it as a personal choice rather than an official operation. Shredder volunteers to join her despite the danger, though Outcast urges him and everyone else to retreat to the rendezvous point without her. Jane briefly wavers upon realizing the girl might be connected to Cersei's death, but ultimately agrees that saving an endangered life matters most, and Outcast heads off alone to attempt the rescue. Outcast tends to the severely injured Dublin leader in hiding, revealing she has deduced the women's true nature as a manipulated figurehead controlled by someone even more powerful and dangerous. She explains the grim toll Oripathy will take on her body and status, noting the strange relief the leader seems to feel at finally escaping her forced role, before letting her fall unconscious and privately resolving to bring her intel back to Rhodes Island despite the risk. Meanwhile, Dublin's other commanders panic upon learning their leader may be dead or gravely wounded, torturing and killing a soldier to confirm the blast's impact, debating how to find her without alerting their own volatile allies Mandragora and Hermione, fearing that losing control of their symbolic leader could unravel everything. They resolve to search the entire city and eliminate anyone who discovers the truth, mobilizing more troops under the guise of routine security sweeps. At the makeshift medical camp, Jane confronts Ronan, a Dublin soldier and former neighbor who betrayed Cersei and now callously orders the removal of wounded Tehran civilians, including children, under the pretense of infection control. Recognizing him as Cersei's betrayer, Jane declares she is no longer identifying as a Victorian soldier, but stands firmly against the cruelty unfolding before her, shielding a grieving mother and her injured son Craig from further harm. She delivers a heartfelt declaration of solidarity, acknowledging she cannot fully understand the Tehran suffering, but insists that stopping injustice transcends allegiance to any side. Her courage inspires the wounded and frightened civilians to rally behind her, defying Ronan's threats and refusing to abandon one another. As Jane raises her torn banner in a symbolic act of resistance, the community unites behind her, ready to stand against Dublin's tyranny together. Bagpipe rescues a young Tehran man from a Dublin soldier about to kill him for witnessing too much, then single-handedly fights off dozens of enemy soldiers with her steam lance, impressing even seasoned fighters with her strength. Outcast reappears carrying the severely injured Draco leader, having killed several Dublin soldiers with thrown stones, and the two women team up to clear debris, blocking an escape route while trading reflections on Victoria's violent history and uncertain future. When enemy reinforcements arrive alongside dangerous Dublin commanders, Outcast decides to stay behind and fight, entrusting the unconscious patient to Bagpipe with instructions to deliver her to Jane and the other Rhodes Island operators waiting nearby. Meanwhile, Dublin's officers, wary of the mysterious duo's combat prowess, prepare cautiously for confrontation, with one commander eager for the coming clash. As Bagpipe fights her way through the city towards the rendezvous point, she senses something unsettling in the strange purple flames flickering above fallen soldiers, hinting at deeper mysteries yet unexplained. She successfully reaches Jane and Shredder, delivering the injured girl and relaying Outcast's parting apology encrypted message about safety before helping others. Just as Jane grows anxious about Outcast's fate, a blinding pillar of light erupts across the city, clearing the storm clouds and illuminating the sky like an artificial dawn. The group watches in stunned silence, sensing the immense power behind the blast, unsure whether it signals disaster or salvation. Shaken but composed, Jane confirms it's time to move and asks Shredder to inform Oliver that they have successfully retrieved someone gravely infected. Hermione reveals to the mysterious Draco leader that Dublin's takeover of County Hillock was never truly about Tehran liberation, but a calculated scheme to spread chaos and turn all of Victoria's attention towards the burning city, framing herself as someone seeking meaning in an endless cycle of destruction. She orders her soldiers to spare civilians and the mysterious rescuers while ensuring the barracks alone bear the blame, revealing her broadcast plan to expose Victorian atrocities and cement Dublin's image as liberators. Colonel Hamilton, refusing to abandon his post as County Hillock falls, draws his saber and faces the incoming blaze alone, declaring his loyalty to Victoria to the very end. Meanwhile, Horn and her remaining soldiers, Cello and Oboe, attempt a desperate assault on the communications tower, but Oboe is killed by Dublin casters and Cello is fatally struck by Mandragora's arts as she nears the control panel. Bagpipe arrives just in time to save Horn from a falling column, but Cello's death and Mandragora's brutal, prideful cruelty reveal the depth of the infiltrators and corruption within Victoria's own ranks. After Dublin's broadcast exposes the barracks' atrocities to the world, Horn accepts that County Hillock is lost and gravely wounded, orders Bagpipe to escape and carry the truth about the Spectre Force to Londinium, sacrificing herself to buy time against the furious Mandragora. Bagpipe reluctantly obeys, launching herself out of the ruined city while vowing not to look back, carrying Horn's final orders and the hope that the truth will finally prevail despite the devastation. In a parallel flashback, Outcast confronts the 6 Dublin commanders alone in an alley, coldly naming and condemning each one of their crimes before loading her final bullet and declaring her faith lies solely in her gun and her own sense of justice. Firing all 6 shots simultaneously, she instantly reduces her enemies to ash in a blinding flash of holy light, but the toll of the attack visibly consumes her body from the fingertips onward. As she is engulfed by the same impartial flame she released, Outcast quietly reflects on an old promise to return alive, a promise she now cannot keep. Much later on, Calicet receives Outcast's ashes and reveals her death fulfills a bet they once made, prompting Misery to insist on personally overseeing her funeral rather than delegating it despite protocol. Misery argues that Rhodes Island must now push into Londinium to uncover the forces responsible for Outcast's death, and Calicet agrees the mission must proceed for the sake of the living, even as personal grief lingers. Aboard the landship, Jane meets the amnesiac leader, Reed, now unaware of their shared past, while Jane herself adjusts to her new life as an operator named Saillock, and later visits Amiya to learn more about Outcast's mysterious history and the fabricated stories she once told. Months later, Bagpipe and Chen continue searching for Horn across the frontier, refusing to give up hope despite official reports dismissing the County Hillock incident as a failed military drill, and the resolve to seek help from old military contacts to uncover the deeper conspiracy still brewing in Victoria. Elsewhere, Jessica prepares to escort expatriates out of Victoria, while sensing unspoken tension around her captain's mysterious absence, and Liscarm hints cryptically at larger political maneuvering behind the scenes. Siege, journeying back towards Londinium with the Doctor, reflects uncertainly on whether she still has a place to return to, finding reassurance in not making the journey alone. Meanwhile, in the Sarkaz court, the Regent and Confessiaris discuss the political threat posed by Dublin's leader, distinguishing her ambitions from Tallulah's and recognizing her as a destabilizing force probing Londinium's defenses. As Rhodes Island's landship draws steadily closer to Victoria, the Regent orders closer surveillance, revealing the King of the Sarkaz intends to reclaim her throne once the pieces align. Thank you for watching. Please follow my Twitter and Blue Sky for updates, and please check out my other Uma Musume and Azir Lane videos as well. There will be a teaser out tomorrow for next week's character summaries.